Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing my current favorite reprint of a game, and that is Chicago Express. Chicago Express is a reprint, mostly, of Wabash Cannonball, which was made sometime earlier. But this game is basically the exact same game with much better components that makes the game, to me, look a ton better. It looks amazing. So with that said, let's open up this huge, odd-shaped box and see what you get inside. Chicago Express, at its heart, is an auctioning game. It's a stock game of different proportion. So each of the four companies start out on the West Coast or on the West Side, and then they go and they try and make it to Chicago. Once they make it to Chicago, they pay out a good bit of money, and that's the ultimate goal of the game. On most games where companies are, getting companies is good and everything, all that stuff is good and grand. But at the very end of the game, the person with the most money is how you win the game. So keep that in mind. The person with the most money wins the game. But on your turn, you take one of these three actions. And the three actions are auctioning, developing, or expanding one of the companies. The way that you show that you are doing an action is you just move the dial forward to the next space. Once it hits red, no more of those actions can be done until the end of the round. It's to note that there's only 3 auctions, 4 developments, and 5 expansions available for each round. A round ends whenever 2 of these dials hit red. Okay, so that's the review of how a turn works. Now let's go ahead and get into these actions. So auctioning. The way auctioning works is that the person who auctions says, okay, I'm going to auction off 1 red. So the red stock goes up for grabs, and the minimum bid for these stocks is going to be the income of it, which is shown on this income track at the bottom. That number divided by the number of shares available, including this stock. Now, the way that auctioning works in this game is a bit different. Auctioning is exactly the same. You go all around the table until everybody passes and somebody bids the highest. That person doesn't pay their money to the bank. He pays their money to that company's treasury. So you can't bid too low, or else your company isn't going to have any money. But you can't bid too high, or else you won't have any money, which makes you win the game. So that's the dilemma here. Is that you kind of have to figure out how much money you can spend for your company, because the money that your company has is how far it can expand toward Chicago. Speaking of which, expansion. That's the third action, or that's one of the actions you can do, which is this train down here. There's 5 of these in a round. The way that expansion works is that you can buy up to three hexes for your company, and they're shown by these little trains that are amazing. These are the coolest trains ever. But so it can expand up to three hexes worth toward however towards or away from or on the board. Now however much you pay for these trains is shown by the negative the negative red number in the train on each hex, and again, that money is not paid from yourself, but paid for by the company. So that money pays for the bank, its change, all that stuff. Now, the reason why expansion is important is because it increases your wealth. It increases your income. So also in these trains, in most of these regions, you see a black plus number. These numbers are in the mountains, and in most of the cities. This number is how much your income increases whenever you hit that zone. So in that example, red would go through a forest. It would go through Binghamton, and then go through another forest. Now up here it has a +1 next to the train, which means it goes +1 on the income track. And then some hexes are restricted in movement. So all the forests and all the mountains can only have 1 company in it. But all of the plains and all the cities can have as many companies as possible in it. And the industrial cities, the black ones. Those can have as many as they want. The only difference in paying for the cities is that each additional company has to pay double of the previous company. So for instance, in Cleveland up here, the first cost is -1. Okay, so the first company to reach Cleveland has to pay 1. If a second company reaches Cleveland, they have to pay 2. If a third company reaches Cleveland, they have to pay 3. So you keep going, doubling the number every time. Now the third thing you can do on your turn is develop. developing gives you money or it gives you more income. So if you develop a city, each city has a house with a plus number in it. That number also shows how much more you increase on the income track. So if I were to increase Charleston over here, whatever companies are in Charleston would get +1 to their income. So that's pretty nice. Then you can also upgrade, or you can also develop mountains. When you develop in the mines, each mine is going to be +2 automatically to your income. So mine develop, you get 2 more income. You can also develop forests. Forests give you 2 money from the bank to your company. Then there's 3 different specialty cities on the board. There is Pittsburgh, Wheeling, and Detroit. Wheeling and Pittsburgh are the exact same mechanic. These don't have a written development point on it. They are signified on this track down here. At the beginning of the game, Wheeling has a development of 3, and Pittsburgh has a development of 4, which means when you go into those cities, you get that much income immediately. Then when you develop, instead of putting one of these houses down onto the city, you just move this track up. So Wheeling is +1 for each one, so Wheeling would increase 1 every time you develop. But Pittsburgh increases 2. So Pittsburgh starts at 4, and then it goes to 6, and then it goes to 8. So each time you develop Pittsburgh, you get +2. And that's just signified by these, by moving the house across the sign here. Then Detroit up here is basically a round counter. Each round you move this up forward, and this is one way that the game ends. If Detroit reaches 8, then at the end of that round the game's over. That's one way the game can end. Now, once 2 of these dials reach red, then dividends are paid. This is how you get money. You take whatever income you are at, or wherever that company income is at, then you divide that by the total shares amongst the table, then each share gets that much money. So for instance, if blue was at 20, and there were 4 shares at the table, each share would pay off $5. If I had 2 of those shares, I would get $10, 5 for each share. So that's how dividends are paid. Then Detroit gets moved up 1, and then do all that all over again. Now, if any company reaches Chicago, they immediately get a +7 income increase, and they get to pay dividends right then and there. So, if blue had reached Chicago at income of 20, then they would get +7, so 27, and then they would immediately do a dividend just for blue. And then a 5th company, the Wabash, is brought onto the board, and it starts off with a train here in Fort Wayne, and then one of its black shares is immediately auctioned off, and will then be used for the rest of the game. Also, Wabash only starts off at 1 income, so it's kind of hard to get Wabash up in the income. But if it comes out early enough, it's a good thing to do. So that's pretty much a basic turn. How the game ends. Oh, game ends. Game ends whenever 3 companies have no more shares left. Whenever 3 companies have no more trains left. Or when Detroit reaches 8. Whenever one of those happen, then the game ends. Or the game ends after that round is over with. So once the round goes, you pay dividends, and then the person with the most money wins the game. Now, what did I think about Chicago Express? I love the mechanics of this game. It's one of the most well-designed games I've played in a while, actually. I love the fact that your money is your money, but you can't spend your money for your shares because it's not in the bank and that kind of thing. You can only spend money that your company has, so you can't auction off shares for extremely low, or else that company won't have a lot of money to make you more money, kind of thing. That's a lot of fun. The other cool thing is that how different alliances will come in the game. Like if 2 people have one of the stocks, then they're going to try and work together to get that stock bigger. But if one person has a different stock, they want to get the other company up. So it's a lot of fun, ton of fun. If you want to go ahead and buy Chicago Express, go ahead and go to Best Day in Games for the best online games and services. And with that said, talk to you then. You better go get this game now.